December 8, 1999, Memphis, Tennessee. A jury of 6 Black and 6 white Americans had just finished deliberating. It took them 1 hour. Their unanimous verdict: Martin Luther King Jr. was killed as part of a conspiracy involving a Memphis restaurant owner named Lloyd Jowers and governmental agencies. The King family won. They were awarded $100, exactly what they had asked for. This was never about money. The next morning, the New York Times called it a vast conspiracy, alleged but not proved. The Washington Post editorial board said the verdict should be forgotten as quickly as possible. The Los Angeles Times ran an article that ended by calling the family's attorney the biggest liar that ever hit the ground. 2 journalists showed up every day of the 4-week trial. One was a correspondent from a newspaper in Lisbon. She later said she could not believe how empty the press gallery was. Court TV stayed in the hallway. Their crew only came into the courtroom when Coretta King or her children took the stand. 70 witnesses testified or gave depositions. 4,000 pages of evidence went into the record. The jury decided the official story was wrong, and the media said, forget about it. April 4, 1968. Memphis. Martin Luther King Jr. was standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, room 306. He had come to Memphis to support a sanitation workers' strike. Black sanitation workers were being paid less than white workers, and they were working in dangerous conditions. 2 workers, Eagle Cole and Robert Walker, had been crushed to death by a garbage truck compactor back in February. King had come to march with the strikers. At 6:01 p.m., a single bullet struck King in the jaw and severed his spinal cord. He was pronounced dead an hour later. He was 39 years old. 2 months later, James Earl Ray was arrested at London's Heathrow Airport. He was carrying a fake Canadian passport and trying to board a flight to Brussels. The FBI said they had their man. Ray's fingerprints were on a rifle found near the scene. He had rented a room in a boarding house overlooking the motel. On March 10, 1969, Ray pleaded guilty to first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 99 years. No trial, no jury, no cross-examination. Case closed. 3 days later, Ray writes to the judge asking to take back his plea. He says his lawyer pressured him into it. He says he did not shoot King. He says he was set up by a man he knew only as Raul. Ray claims Raul gave him money, told him to buy a rifle, and told him to rent that specific room. Then Raul vanished, and Ray became the most wanted man in America. The courts reject his request. For the next 29 years, James Earl Ray files appeal after appeal, trying to get a real trial. It never happens. The King family watched this unfold. At first, they accepted the official story, but Ray's claim never changed. Year after year, he said someone set him up. Meanwhile, they knew the FBI had been surveilling King. Hoover despised him. The doubts piled up. Coretta Scott King started visiting Ray in prison. She sat with him and listened to him tell his story. Over time, she came to believe him. So did her children. If Ray did not do it, who did? On March 27, 1997, at a Nashville prison, Dexter King, the second son of Martin Luther King Jr., walked in to meet James Earl Ray face to face. Ray was 69, dying of liver disease, and had been locked up almost 30 years. Dexter sat across from him. Cameras were rolling. He asked the question directly. "I just want to ask you, for the record, did you kill my father?" Ray said no. Then Dexter said something that made headlines across the country. "As awkward as this may seem, I want you to know that I believe you, and my family believes you. We are going to do everything in our power to try and make sure that justice will prevail. I have always been a spiritual person. I believe in providence. I believe in divine intervention, and I believe that in some way we will make a way out of no way. He shook Ray's hand. The son of Martin Luther King Jr. had just told the convicted assassin he thinks he is innocent. The family pushed for Ray to finally get a trial. But time ran out. On April 23, 1998, Ray died in prison of liver failure at 70 years old. 29 of those years had been spent behind bars, saying he did not do it and asking for his day in court. But the King family was not finished. Back in 1993, a man named Lloyd Jowers went on ABC Primetime Live with Sam Donaldson. Jowers owned Jim's Grill, a restaurant in Memphis. It sat right below the rooming house where James Earl Ray stayed the day of the assassination. The back door of Jim's Grill led to a patch of bushes behind the Lorraine Motel. For 25 years, Jowers told police the same thing. He said he was serving customers when he heard a noise that sounded like something falling in his kitchen. He did not see anything, and he did not know anything. Now he was on national television telling a different story. He said he was paid $100,000 by a Memphis produce dealer named Frank Liberto, who allegedly had ties to the Marcello crime family out of New Orleans. He said he helped set up the assassination. He said James Earl Ray was a patsy. He said a Memphis police lieutenant named Earl Clark was the actual shooter. He said Raoul was real. Why stay quiet for 25 years? Jowers said he was scared. He said he was getting old and wanted to clear his conscience. With James Earl Ray dead, the King family could not get him a trial, but they could file a civil lawsuit, put the evidence in front of a jury, and let 12 people decide. November 1999. Coretta Scott King and her children filed a wrongful death lawsuit in Shelby County Circuit Court. They named Lloyd Jowers as the defendant. They also named other unknown co-conspirators. Their attorney was William Pepper. Pepper had known Martin Luther King Jr. in the last year of his life. He had written a magazine article about Vietnamese children burned by napalm. King saw it, reached out, and they became friends. Pepper was there when King gave his Riverside Church speech against the war in April 1967. After King's assassination, the family asked Pepper to look into it. He spent over 2 decades investigating. He interviewed witnesses, tracked down documents, and represented James Earl Ray in his appeals. Now he is representing the family. The trial starts November 15, 1999. It runs nearly 4 weeks. Judge James E. Swearingen is presiding. Pepper calls 70 witnesses. The picture that emerges looks nothing like the official story. The FBI started monitoring King during the Montgomery bus boycott in late 1955. By 1963, they were running a full counterintelligence operation, wiretapping his phones, bugging hotel rooms. J. Edgar Hoover called King the most dangerous Negro in America. He wanted to destroy him. In November 1964, the FBI mailed a package to King's home in Atlanta. Inside was a tape recording of surveillance audio from a hotel room and an anonymous letter. The letter called King a filthy, abnormal animal. It called him a fraud. It told him there was only one way out and gave him 34 days. King was traveling, and Coretta opened it first. The letter was trying to push King to kill himself before he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. The FBI admitted years later they sent it. William Sullivan, Hoover's assistant director, was behind it. At the trial, witnesses described what happened in Memphis on April 4, 1968. A black Memphis police officer named Ed Reddit was assigned to a detail watching King. About 2 hours before the shooting, Reddit was called back to headquarters. He was told there were threats against his own life. He was taken off the assignment. The morning after King was killed, Memphis police cut down the bushes behind Jim's Grill. Several witnesses at the scene said they believed the shot came from those bushes, not from the rooming house window above. The brush was cleared before any detailed forensic work could happen. 2 ballistic tests were done on the rifle Ray purchased. Both were inconclusive. They could not match that rifle to the bullet that killed King. Andrew Young testified. He was standing near King when the shot hit. Reverend James Lawson testified too. He was one of King's closest allies in Memphis. They talked about what King was planning next. He was not just supporting a sanitation strike. He was organizing the Poor People's Campaign. The idea was to bring hundreds of thousands of poor Americans, Black, white, Native American, and Latino, to Washington, to set up a tent city on the National Mall, to go to Congress every single day and demand action on poverty, jobs, and housing. Lawson testified that this made King dangerous to the entire power structure, not just Southern segregationists. King was connecting racism, poverty, and the Vietnam War. He was building a multiracial movement. People in power were paying attention. The defense in this trial did not put up much of a fight. Jowers was 73 and sick. He showed up for 3 days, then could not continue. He died 5 months later. His attorney, Lewis Garrison, told the jury they could reasonably conclude King was the victim of a conspiracy. He said it was hard to believe the owner of a greasy spoon and an escaped convict pulled this off by themselves. The government agencies named in the testimony, FBI, CIA, military intelligence, and Memphis police, were not defendants. They were not in the courtroom and could not be cross-examined. December 8, 1999, the jury goes out to deliberate. 4 weeks of testimony, 70 witnesses, thousands of pages of evidence. They return in 1 hour. The verdict is unanimous. Did Lloyd Jowers participate in a conspiracy to do harm to Dr. Martin Luther King? Yes. Were governmental agencies also parties to this conspiracy? Yes. Coretta Scott King holds a press conference the next day in Atlanta. There is abundant evidence of a major high-level conspiracy in the assassination of my husband. The jury was clearly convinced that the mafia, local, state, and federal government agencies were deeply involved. The jury affirmed that someone other than James Earl Ray was the shooter and that Ray was set up to take the blame. Dexter steps up. This is the period at the end of the sentence. So please, after today, don't ask me if I believe James Earl Ray killed my father. I've been hearing that my whole life. No, I don't. This is the end of it. They asked for $100. They got it. The government saw it differently. Attorney General Janet Reno ordered the Department of Justice to investigate. In June 2000, the Department of Justice published a 150-page report rejecting the verdict. The report said the evidence did not establish any conspiracy. It said Jowers made up his story for money. It said the witnesses were not credible. It said no further investigation was warranted. But that report was not a trial. Nobody testified under oath. No jury weighed the evidence. The government investigated claims against itself and cleared itself. The Memphis verdict was never overturned in any court. It still stands. The media had already made up its mind. The Washington Post advised readers to forget it. King biographer David Garrow called the verdict almost meaningless. Gerald Posner, who wrote a book arguing that James Earl Ray acted alone, said the family got a rubber stamp. Critics raised real questions. The government could not defend itself because it was not named as a defendant. Jowers told different versions of his story over the years. Some witnesses wanted money. Much of the testimony was hearsay. The defense barely contested anything, but 70 people swore to tell the truth. A mixed-race jury heard 4 weeks of evidence. They took 1 hour to decide. The verdict was unanimous. The full transcript is still posted on the King Center website. Anyone can read it. Lloyd Jowers died May 2000, 5 months after the verdict. Coretta Scott King died January 2006. She never stopped believing the conspiracy was real. William Pepper kept investigating until his death in April 2024. Dexter King died that same January of prostate cancer. He was 62. Martin Luther King III and Bernice King are the only surviving children. Bernice runs the King Center now. She has said it pains her heart that James Earl Ray spent his life in prison for something he did not do. She has said she is certain there was a conspiracy, from the government down to the mafia. In July 2025, the Trump administration released over 230,000 pages of FBI files on King. Many documents had been sealed since 1977. They were supposed to stay locked until 2027. Historians are still going through them. The King family put out a statement. They said they support transparency, but object to anyone using the files to spread falsehoods about their father. This is the first MLK Day since those files came out. The trial transcript is online. The verdict stands. The DOJ still says it was wrong. The FBI surveilled King for 13 years. They sent him a letter telling him to kill himself. The man convicted of his assassination took back his guilty plea 3 days later and spent 29 years saying he was framed. The King family took it to court. A jury said government agencies were involved. The government said no. The media said forget about it. The evidence is public. You can read it yourself.